There's a bit more. Oh, thickly blotched. So these artificial, feverish, and the compound adjective thickly blotched all contribute to this idea of it being something fake and something artificial. Feverish suggests that it kind of, it brings you out. It brings out the worst in you, that there's something kind of, maybe add the word in here, something gross about it. Brings out the worst in you, brings you out in a fever. And yeah, literally fake. Now, why would he present Paris like this? If we go back to our AO3, part of what he is doing in terms of his purpose is to describe it from his point of view. So although this is journalism, I said at the start that it's not attempting or needing to be unbiased in any way. This is an opinionative bit of journalism. So we get Hemingway's opinion. So this is opinionative. And we get the sense that he's lived in Paris for a while, so he almost feels like a local. So it's opinionative, he feels local, and he is disgusted by how he sees these outsiders changing the feeling and atmosphere of Paris. He obviously feels like it's been changed for the worse as it becomes this tourist destination. And I'm going to give you one more annotation for this section over here. And this is where the representation of Paris as a place changes quite a bit. So he feels that it's fake and it's gross here, but by the time he gets to the end of this section, he's saying something much darker. And he's saying that the reality of Paris is that it's quite a dangerous place. It's become quite a dangerous place. So you see that he's kind of describing that people, the locals, are prone to crime, likely to attack tourists, and he talks about hard-faced kids contrasted to the sleek people, the sleek tourists, and this whole section here describes what's likely to happen to them. So he says, it is a chop back of the ear with a piece of lead pipe wrapped in laman that does the trick, and the tourist has at last made contact with the nightlife he has spent so much money in seeking. So I'm going to highlight that phrase there, made contact with the nightlife. So Hemingway's punning. He's punning on the phrasal verb to make contact with. So there's a couple of things all building up this picture here. So there's a bit of a pun on the phrasal verb, because like to make contact with something can mean just to experience it, which is what the people mean when they say they want to make contact with the nightlife. They want to experience it. But the pun he's making is that the physical contact of this lead piping being used to like batter someone around the head so they can steal from them is much more realistic, much more likely. So when he's punning on that phrasal verb, what he's doing is saying that the nightlife is a metaphor for crime. So the nightlife of Paris, rather than being the bars and the clubs and things, is actually the real nightlife is crime. Is criminals going around looking for tourists to attack. And therefore, the representation of Paris is that Paris is violent. And that the tourists only see one side of it. They see the glamorous side with the expensive bottles of champagne and the nice restaurants, and they don't see the reality. So Paris is violent, and I'm going to say this is a bit of a clumsy phrase, and I can't think of any way better to change it, but I'm sure you can. A many-faced city. Multifaceted. That isn't already immediately better, and actual fact, I'm just going to get rid of that. Multifaceted. city. And that depending on why you're there, you're going to see a different side of the city. If you're there as a tourist, you're going to see the glamorous side. If you know the city better, you're going to know that it is actually much more violent than that. And this juxtaposition here of these two different noun phrases help to illustrate the idea that it is quite different depending on who you are. So up here, juxtaposition of two noun phrases, the hard-faced kids and the sleek people, accurately illustrate the difference between the tourists and the locals. Now, given that this is all kind of one main point, I'm going to keep that as my main AO4, and I'm going to put in my main AO3 down here. I think that this would be best linked to something to do with, we've not mentioned register yet. And I think the punning, yes, we're going to make this point about register. The punning is part of what brings the register down slightly. That more humorous tone makes it a bit more medium register. So I'm going to link this to register and also linked to the purpose of entertaining. Because although he's making a difficult kind of hard point here, he does still try to make it a bit funny by having the pun of making contact with. Because he doesn't feel too sorry for these tourists that are being battered around the head with a metal bar or a lead pipe, because he thinks that they, if you've read the whole thing, you'll see he thinks that they're asking for it really, that they're being a bit naive, they're spending too much money, they're wandering around drunk on their own, and actually they're just ripe for exploitation in some way. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do on that middle section. You'll need to go back in. I'd suggest finding 2 more examples on this page, and then the Mecca of Fakers. Now, again, pause the video and reread Mecca of Fakers if you don't remember what that bit is about. Okay, so this section is similar to both previous sections. It's saying that there's something artificial and false about Paris, but rather than it being the city itself, it's the people that it attracts. So Mecca is a kind of, to put an AO3 point in here, is like the holy land for 3 different religions. And the point they're trying to make is that people are attracted to Paris. Lots of different people for different reasons are attracted to that city to find fame and fortune. But actually they're saying that it attracts people that pretend to be searching. They pretend to be famous, but actually they're fakers themselves. And I'm going to pick one example from this section because I'm conscious of how long this video has been going on already. We're at 41 minutes. It's going to take a year and a day to upload to YouTube. I'm going to give you an example from the middle of this text, and you will need to find about 3 examples of your own. So there's a pattern of interesting verbs in this section here that illustrate how the people, these people that are attracted to Paris, are kind of chancers really. Inundated, get away, claim, check up. So in this section he's saying that these people, they make claims about who they are, they try to get away with things, they have inundated the city, and that it is impossible to check up on them. So this pattern of verbs, remember, you're getting much better at identifying the patterns. Try to be doing that wherever you can. So this pattern of verbs, and it includes a phrasal verb, 2 phrasal verbs, / phrasals. They emphasise that these people in Paris are criminals is maybe a bit of a strong word, but they are chancers. So the people in Paris are chancers. They're attempting to pull the wool over the Parisians' eyes and say, oh, in Russia I am this really famous Russian dancer, and then he's saying, well, actually not at all. And then what would we link this to? I'm going to go back to my list at the start and see what I've not done. We've talked about the fact that it's journalism, we've done our genre, we've done our mode, we've done our register, we've definitely done text producer, receiver and purpose. We've covered everything. In that case, I'm going to go with whatever seems most natural. I'm going to go with mode here, because I think that building up of the patterning of the language is something that you would struggle to do if you were speaking spontaneously. So this is all about the very planned nature of what he's doing, because he is trying to kind of craft and create this representation. That's part of his job. And you can't do that if you are speaking in a way that is even semi-spontaneous. It needs a lot of thought and time. Okay, so you only have one annotation in this section. I think that you will need another 2 or 3. And I said probably 2 on that. So let's say if you do 3 on Mecca of Fakers, plus 2 on Wild Night Music, plus 1, that's 6 different annotations. I would put aside about 45 minutes to do that. And then you are finished with On Paris. Okay, I hope that was helpful. It was a nice change to do a video on something different. A bit more of a slog to get through, but hopefully enjoyable nonetheless. Alright, bye bye.